are the characteristics of a healthy relationship? And since you're on the screen, Rachel, we'll start with you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. Well, first of all, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Rachel Grant, and I primarily work with those who have experienced childhood sexual trauma, though in the course of my 14 years of work, I come into contact with many women who have also experienced sexual assault in adulthood, and oftentimes these experiences are co-occurring, unfortunately. And a big piece of my work as a sexual abuse recovery coach definitely is working with people in redefining what is a healthy relationship. You know, when we experience trauma, that's in the context of a relationship, and so it sets up this, you know, context that often leads us to have some ideas about relationship, like I'm always going to be disrespected, or I better get what I can, you know, take what I can get. And shame, I know for myself, I was 10 years in an abusive relationship, certainly as a result of the childhood trauma that I experienced and other assaults in my teenage years. And you know, when we think about a healthy relationship, there are going to be lots of great answers here, so I'm not going to name them all. I'll leave some for everybody. But the first thing that comes to mind for me is a sense of wholeness. One thing my mom always said to me about relationship is find somebody who doesn't make you apologize for who you are, and do the same for someone else. So that's really been a very major cornerstone for me in building healthy relationship, is that sense of, can I accept and love all the parts of who I am, the messy parts, the awesome parts, you know, the I don't want to parts, and the yep, I'm up for it, all of it. And can I offer that to a partner as well? And can we have a dynamic in which there's space for all of that to be happening, and instead of shaming or blaming or trying to constantly shift or change the other person, can we embrace first ourselves and then the other person? That's really what's, I think, top of mind for me today in response to that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Karen?
Thank you. And thank you so much for creating this, Damika, creating this opportunity to share with all these beautiful women here who've come and opened themselves and become vulnerable. So when we teach, we typically talk about relationships in the context of two people. Sometimes it can be more than two people, but at least two people. And what we really focus on is that a relationship is really just two individuals. And so that because of that, a relationship is really only as healthy as the individuals who are in the relationship. So we spend a lot of time focusing on how to become, as individuals in the relationship, become emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, physically healthy, energetically healthy, so that we're able to bring that to our partners and bring that to the relationship. Because without that, because of various childhood traumas and traumas throughout life, including traumas, sexual trauma, be it in the military or outside of the military, all of those things come into the relationship and become the baggage of the relationship. So what we're doing is really unpacking our own baggage so that we're not hauling all that into our relationships with the other party. So that's really what our focus is, and what a healthy relationship looks like is healthy individuals.
Thank you. And Allie, sorry.
No worries, I can respond to either. So low key, I'm at my daughter's house babysitting 4 grandbabies, all under the age of 6, and my husband's flight was delayed, so he's not here. So I'm going to be clicking off and making sure, like if I hear a scream, that's what's happening. It's going good right now. But thank you for putting this together. Thank you for having me. Healthy relationships. So I focus on frequencies and energy, and so a healthy relationship to me is, the universe sends us people into our world for 3 reasons, and 3 reasons only. And that is to remind us of who we are, to give us the opportunity to heal, and to expand our consciousness. And that is it. And so relationships and the reflection of other people is that golden nugget for us to look at ourselves and go, ooh, what do I need to work on? How can I expand? What can I be grateful for? And so a healthy relationship to me is understanding that the person that you called into your world is there to show you what you need to work on. Where do you need to heal? Because if we wait until we are healed or fixed, we'll never be in a relationship. So let that person come into your world. And so if you have a frequency of unworthiness, know that this person is going to come into your world who cheats on you, who does all the things, because that is your belief about yourself. And so when you look at that and you say, ooh, this is my world that's unfolding around me in this relationship, and I don't like it, then it's up to you to be like, okay, how can I shift it? Because we spend so much time trying to change the external world, change our partner, change the things like, no, a healthy relationship starts here. So you can navigate, okay, this is showing up. What in me do I need to shift? I need to change, because you can leave that relationship and then surprise, your next relationship is uncovering the same thing. So it's like, let's just cut that out. I mean, there are times when you're just like, I hear you. I know it's me. However, I don't want to do this with this person. And that's totally cool too. So healthy relationship is understanding whatever shows up, whatever reflects is inside of you. And then to take that time to start to make those shifts within yourself from a place of course, compassion and love.
Excellent, excellent, excellent answers. Y'all are giving us golden nuggets. So Dr. Kat gave us an excellent explanation on sensuality and sexuality. So my question next is for Stacey. Will you define sexuality and sensuality, please?
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much I'm honored to be part of this conference, speaking about a very important topic in our lives and in our relationships. So in my world and what I do is I actually work with professional women, especially those that are very much in their masculine energy, because I teach them how to be strong, feminine, and seductive in the presence of high quality men. So they can, take off that mask that they're showing the world, that tough girl exterior, and drop into their divine feminine, so their man can show up in his divine masculine, right? And so that's what I work out, because I also teach women how to understand men. And I love this question about sensuality and sexuality, because sensuality in my world, that's a way of being, right? And what happens is feminine energy is naturally attuned to sensuality, right? And we were actually designed that way so that we can be in union with men. I'm talking specifically men here, because men are naturally predatorial, right? And so this is how those energies fit together, that whole yin yang symbol that's there. And so sensuality is your way of being. It's also about the senses, right? That's why sensuality is in there. And also with my Tantra background, it is about really being immersed in your presentness, in your nowness, and about your allure, your charisma, and really tapping into that in an authentic and deep way. So that's how I define sensuality. It's really about your way of being. And then sexuality is your sexual expression, right? So your sexuality is your sexual expression and how you choose to express that in your life. So with your sexual expression, it's not about necessarily even what you are labeling yourself as. It's more about, are you confident? Are you in love with how you are expressing your sensuality, your sexuality, and intimacy? Because intimacy and sex are two totally different things. And so this is how I would define it. So sensuality is like that way of being, especially in your femininity. And then sexuality has to be how you express your sexual urges and your proclivities and things of that nature. So that's how I would define that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Our next question is, how does sensuality and sexuality play a part in a healthy relationship? And this question goes to Karen.
So just as so many of the panelists have observed, including Kat in her beautiful opening statement, sensuality is really our connection to ourselves, to our environment, to the other through our bodies. So through our senses, so our sense of sight, our sense of touch, our sense of hearing, our sense of sound, like all of our sense of taste. And so, and they're really actually more than those, you know. For example, neuroception is a sense, and that's how we sense danger, you know, when we can feel the hairs rise up on the back of our necks, or when we feel safe. Those are through neuroception. So there are lots of different forms aside from those 5, but when we're fully come back home to our bodies. And when I say come back home, it's because when we experience trauma, and especially sexual trauma, we tend to disconnect from our bodies because our bodies are no longer that safe place. Our bodies no longer feel like home. So we're really coming back to home when we connect with our senses in a very intentional way. Because of that disconnect, we've really got to reconnect with what does food taste like again? Because after trauma, sometimes it's like things don't really have a taste. It's, you know, you're eating, but there isn't a whole lot of taste, or colors don't have the same vibrancy. You know, there's smells, but some of them like smell noxious. Like, you know, there's an awareness of noxious smells, but not those really pleasant smells. So it's really coming back into our sense of ourselves and connection with our body. And so that in relationship, it's connecting with the other person through our senses. So connecting, you know, we have practices where you're really taking in the other person like through each one of the senses, and using each one of the senses to connect without any expectation or intention of sexual connection. Because a lot of times that becomes an issue because there's like this quid pro quo, well, we're going to do this so that we can get to that. And so this is really just about who we are sensually. And then sexually, sexual pleasure and pleasure in and of itself, and we talk about pleasure in terms of emotional pleasure, spiritual pleasure, physical pleasure, as well as sexual pleasure. But sexual pleasure produces all these juicy feel-good hormones and chemicals in our bodies. So oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, all these, you know, wonderful feel-good kinds of chemicals and hormones. And so then our tissues in our body are actually sort of marinating in these. And so that's part of what makes sexuality and sexual connection with the right person in the right context healthy for our bodies. We talk about sexual pleasure as a form of healing. And so there should be like actual healing that occurs as a result of the sexual connection.
Thank you. And Rachel, I'm going to ask you the same question. How does sensuality and sexuality play a part in a healthy relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think that, first of all, you know, Karen killed it. So yes, I think what I'm feeling called to add to that is really that there's so much playfulness and opportunity and self-expression that happens when we're really embodied and really connected with self. And that sex can be this wonderful place of like exploration. Absolutely. I love that it's coming through this idea that we can heal through sexuality, especially when this has been a place of core wounding for so many of us. And, you know, I think for so many of my clients and even in my own experience, you know, sex gets very tricky because our introduction to our sexual self, if this trauma occurred early, you know, is within the framework of violation. And even if we've experienced assault later in life, right? It takes sex out of this realm of play and pleasure and expression, and things become kind of enveloped and wrapped up and tied to this. And so when we associate our body or sexuality with pain or violation or objectification, wounding or shame, then we ultimately are not in this vessel. We're not able to be and live here. And then, you know, and so then how can we be in relationship with another, right? And so the way that we get to connect, one of the ways that we get to connect with other human beings is through the play of sex and sensuality and desire. And so we want to have that piece of the puzzle, you know, and be able to access that in our relationships. Otherwise it's kind of like you have a bit of the pie, but you're missing a piece. And, you know, I want the whole damn pie. Okay. So, you know, let's have that. And I mean, that's really why we're here championing you all and supporting you in this, because we want you to have just a fully empowered, you know, luscious life that, you know, you get to take back, you know, these parts of your life that maybe are feeling very constricted because of the trauma you've experienced. Yeah.
Excellent, Rachel. I'm with you. I'm like, when it comes to pie, I don't want the slice. I don't even want the pie. I want the entire bakery. Okay. I want the entire bakery. Let's get that healing taken care of, right?
On, right?
Right. Spot on. Spot on.
Yeah.
Okay. This next one's coming to you, Allie. How can you create the relationship you want when there is something missing?
How can you create the relationship you want when there is something missing? But what is missing? So whatever is missing, because we're looking outside of ourselves, right? So when we notice something is missing, then I believe that's our higher self just simply saying, this is something that we need to give to ourselves and to bring forward, right? So when you want to create that relationship that you want, and we're hung up on what is missing, right? I want him or her to talk to me a certain way, or to do these things for me, or to read my mind, which is a really popular one. Like, why didn't they read my mind? Then it is up to us to start to create and to show, this is how I would like to be spoken to. This is what I like. So communication sometimes, especially after trauma, is very limited. And so we don't like to share, this is what I want, this is what I desire, this feels good, this is what I don't want, because we're afraid of being shut down, right? We're afraid of having conflict of any kind. So then we just let it be. But this is the time to step into our power when you say, this is the relationship that I want. And it's not necessarily, these are the things that I want, but more so, this is how I want to feel within the relationship. Then how can I show up, right? So everybody is responsible for their own feeling within the relationship. It is not up to the other person to show up in a certain way to make us feel a certain way, right? That's not their responsibility, and it's definitely not their business. And so when we say, this is the relationship that I want, then how can I show up? And if something is missing and we keep asking for it and we keep asking for it and it's not happening, then there's two things that you can do. You can simply say, okay, that's not available for me now, and that's fine. Or how can I get it somewhere else, right? So start to make that shift. If it's that important to you, what would that look like? And everybody has their own structure for relationships and what that looks like. So I'll just leave that there. And so that is my thought on as far as missing and how to create a relationship that works for you, right? Works is a working word, and it's constantly changing and unfolding and shifting and pivoting. So it's just always checking in with yourself to see how you can show up.
Awesome. Thank you. Yep. Stacey, go for it.
Well, that was fantastic, Allie. I'm actually going to piggyback off of what Allie was sharing and just kind of give you something really practical that you can do today after you're done with the conference. So one of the ways in terms of getting what you want in a relationship, sometimes there are people, they don't even know what they want. Because there are times when I ask, okay, what is it that you want in a relationship? And many times what a lot of women will do is they will list everything they don't want. So like, okay, now that you know what you don't want, what is it that you do want? So here's how I want you to kind of go at identifying that. So this is something that I teach. It's around relationship design. And so to identify what you want, I want you to kind of look at the 7 key relationship areas, right? And I define those as mental, emotional, physical, sexual, social, financial, and spiritual, in those 7 areas. And I want you to think of, in your relationships in those 7 areas, what is it that you desire to have? Now, here's the real important part, ladies. You have to take a 360-degree view of this, because here's what a lot of women do. They only focus on what they want in the other partner. Tunnel vision, right? And that's all they want to focus on. But that's only one dimension of a successful relationship. So yes, you need to know the qualities in your other partner, but you also need to think about how you want your partner to treat you in these 7 relationship areas. All right, so that's the second part of this. How do you want your partner to treat you? And that goes into your boundaries, right? It plays into all of those, your self-worth, because your self-worth is how you value yourself on the inside. And how you value yourself on the inside, ladies, is how other people, especially men, will value you. And so it all kind of plays into that. And then your self-image is how you project your value to other people, and how you project your value is how other people will treat you. And that's where boundaries comes in, right? And so that's why you have to think in all of your relationships, how do you want your partner to treat you? Now, here's the third component of this, to really identify what you want, because then you'll know what's missing in the relationship. So the third part, and this is really important, I want everyone to listen to this. In these 7 same areas, think about, how are you going to show up in the relationship in these 7 areas? So if you've ever said, or if you ever had a history, oh, I get lost in my relationship. All of a sudden, I'm doing everything that he wants to do, and all of my interests have gone woohoo out the window. And if you've ever said that, or if you've ever felt that, it's because you didn't think about how you were going to show up in the relationship. That is why you get lost in it. So to answer that first part, that is how you can identify what you want, so that you can know what's missing, right, in the relationship. So now, after you identify, right, depending on what's missing, there are 2 different ways. So the first thing I gave you in terms of that relationship design, that would be the politically correct way to go about doing that. Now, if something is missing in the relationship, it really depends on how strong that bond you have with your primary partner, because there are alternative things that you can do if something is missing in your relationship, because I also teach and I also coach people that want to do alternative relationship dynamics. And what I'm talking about specifically, if you want to open your relationship up. So that is what some couples do. If something is missing in their relationship, they will open up the relationship, and it really depends on what's missing. So especially in the sexual arena, sometimes they will open it up because maybe one partner is sick and they can't perform intimately or sexually, whatever. So they open it up so that their partner can get that, but they love their partner. They just cannot do this for whatever reason, right? And things of that nature. They can have ED or whatever the case may be. So that would be what I would say the non-politically correct way of doing, but it's still legitimate. And so we want to put all of those different things on the table. And here's why I wanted to bring that out. The way that relationships are going and the model that we've been following is broken. It is broken. I mean, you having a divorce rate almost 50%, that kind of tells you it's broken. So what happens is you have to think outside the box to find out what works for you. Not everybody else, not Tom, Dick, and Harry, or anything like that, what works for you. And it's about redefining that so you can find a successful path for you. All right. So that's how I would define that. And so try that out. So do that little list and do your little blueprint thing and stuff like that, so you can determine what is missing in your relationships and how you can turn that around.